With the third overall episode, the Second Take crew selects you, the viewer, lucky enough to catch this 2018 NFL Draft special episode of Second Take. I'm Jared Pohl, along with Jacob Waxman, and we have got a ton in store for you today. We will be talking about who's going to be taken first overall, who the Giants want to draft, which QB the Jets are going to take, and much more. So the first topic we have, obviously, is the first overall pick, and ever since the season ended, even much before that, the Browns have been on the clock with the first draft pick. Who do you think they're going to take with their pick, Jacob?
Well, I think knowing that they hired the new GM, John Dorsey, I think he's one of the GMs that drafts more for potential rather than raw talent coming out of college. And with that, I think you could take a guy like Josh Allen, who's out of Wyoming, who has a Cam Newton type body. He doesn't have the muscle mass that Newton has, but he has a very strong arm. He added touch to the ball, which scouts were concerned that he didn't have prior to the combine. And I think they could really use a quarterback like Josh Allen in their offense.
But you could argue, yeah, he might have the highest potential. Obviously, he's got a big arm. They got the big hands kind of meme going on Twitter. But I think the Browns, they really got to go with a safer pick. I mean, yeah, Josh Allen, he's pretty good. I think he has the potential to be the best. But I think you really want a safer pick like, Darnold or even Rosen. I think both those guys are more pro-ready. I think that's who the Browns are going to draft.
Well, I think when you're looking at Darnold and Allen, I think you have to look at what's going on in their division. When you look at their division, Roethlisberger, Flacco, Dalton, they all have big arms. And especially with picking up Tyrod Taylor this offseason, the Browns have a little leeway on who they could put in at quarterback for the rest of the season. So I think Tyrod can play a great amount of games for the Browns this season and give Allen the time and room to develop into what they hope to be a franchise quarterback.
Well, yeah, you always want to think about, what you could develop QBs into down the line. But I think this Browns team, despite their 0-16 record last year, they're ready to compete right now. I mean, look at the pieces they got. They got Landry. They got the running back from San Francisco, Hyde. They got a bunch of guys, that could contribute this year. They got Josh Gordon coming back. All these guys can contribute this year. And, I mean, looking at the other teams in the division, I mean, the Ravens are always, kind of mediocre. I don't think they're going anywhere. The Bengals, I feel like they're kind of on, the downslope, too. I mean, I can't really name anyone besides Dalton or Adrian on that team. And then you look at the Steelers, they're pretty good, but I mean, they got a bunch of issues going on there. I mean, Antonio Brown, he's got injury issues sometimes. Same thing with Roethlisberger. You got the issues of him not being able to play at home. I think the Browns could really capitalize if they draft the right guy, like let's say Darnold. This could be their season.
Yeah, I agree with you in that, but when you look at who they're drafting first overall with that big title of, oh, you're the first pick, you're going to play for us immediately, I think to a certain extent, having that title for Darnold, or for anybody for that matter, can really rush them into starting and possibly having a down season. And I don't think the Browns want that. I think they want to have a multiple win season. And I think if you draft someone like Allen with the potential who could sit behind Tyrod Taylor and learn the game with Hugh Jackson's offense, I think that could mean a lot for them in the future, especially debating on who they get with the fourth pick in the draft.
But there's also the other alternative. If you're comfortable with having Tyrod Taylor start, why don't you draft someone like, say, Saquon Barkley or even Nick Chubb, or even trade down? I mean, they already have another pick, number 4, but get even more draft picks. I mean, I think this is a team that they have so many options, number 1. It kind of depends on their kind of outlook. I mean, if they have all the quarterbacks rated, similarly, all the 4 top quarterbacks, and do you think they could go Barkley number 1?
I think they could, depending on how close their grades are on each quarterback. I think if they realize that they really fell in love with a prospect and his grade is so much higher than the others, I think that's where they decide that they take a quarterback or that specific quarterback first overall. And I think if they're all 2 to 3 numbers away for their grades, I think that's when they decide, all right, let's take the best overall prospect in the draft, which happens to be Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I definitely think Barkley's the best, prospect in this draft. But I think the Browns, their team. I mean, you look at the defense, offense. I think all around they're pretty set, believe it or not. Despite last year, they got a lot of young talent on that team. I think you really need a quarterback to round out that talent. And going with the theme of quarterback, next up we have on our topic list is the Giants. They're obviously second overall. I think really who they draft's it's really gonna reflect on whatever decision the Browns are going to make. I mean, if they draft Barkley overall, that could throw a whole wrench into their plan. It could, have them select their QB of the future. And unlike the Browns, they actually do have, their QB right now. They know Eli Manning. He's able to perform at a high level at that.
Yeah, I think the press and the media is kind of blowing the Saquon Barkley pick out of proportion for the Giants. I think that knowing that they don't have an offensive line, they can't take a running back. All they have is a left tackle, and Nate Solder, who they signed in the offseason. Eric Flowers is now moved to right tackle, who they're looking at to trade, but their interior line is absolutely horrible. Weston Richburg signed in the offseason with the 49ers, and they lost most of their starters for last year's offensive line. And I think when you're looking at running back prospects, especially one as good as Barkley, you need to surround him with a good offensive line, and I just don't think the Giants have that for this season. Along with that, I think when you're looking at next year's draft, there isn't a great quarterback class, and Eli Manning could retire for all we know after next season. And I think with that, you need to take a quarterback this year in this draft that has good talent and could step in next year or even possibly this year in case anything would happen at Manning. And I think this is the year that the Giants would need to take a quarterback so they can revamp their offense and their franchise.
But that's kind of been the narrative with Barkley. I mean, as a Penn State fan yourself, one of their arguments is that Penn State didn't really have much of an offensive line. That's correct, right? Like they really don't have one of the better offensive lines, in college football. And the Giants' offensive line, the fact that they lost so many starters, can't you argue that's actually a good thing? Because, I mean, that line last year is atrocious. I mean, you have to put Eric Flowers on your left tackle, you know your quarterback's done. Like, the running game's shot. But it's not the case this year. You signed Nate Solder, who actually I read that he was a second-rated left tackle in the league, the second half of last season. He had an excellent season. And the other guys, I mean, they signed a bunch of young guys and pieces. Not only that, they have the rest of the draft. I think they could really go the first 3 rounds. They could definitely go offensive line with 2 of those picks. I mean, get another guard, get another tackle, a prospect. I think that the Giants really need to get Barkley because they haven't had a really good running game since Bradshaw and Jacobs. And, we saw teams like the Cowboys and the Rams. They really depend on their running game. And, the thing with the NFL, it's not a one-year league; it's a multiple-year league. And yeah, you get Barkley this year. Next year, you could draft an offensive tackle or offensive guard. I think getting Barkley now really sets the key to the future for them.
With the Penn State and Barkley stuff with their offensive line, I agree to a certain extent. I think that when you're in the NFL, and even when he was in college, when his offensive line didn't block well for him, defensive tackles and ends and linebackers would just shoot through the gaps and tackle him for loss. And I think with that comes that he's trying to make a play out of everything. He wants to make a big home run play. He wants to gain yardage on every play. And with that, when you don't have a good offensive line in the NFL, that can turn into a lot of negative plays, especially with the speed and physicality that the NFL has played with. And I think if he tries to create too many big plays out of something that isn't going anywhere, I think that can leave them in a lot of trouble. And then with the Giants, yeah, you have a great left tackle in Nate Solder, but you can't run the ball behind him every time. The defense is going to catch on. They're going to realize they're going to close up those gaps. And I think although he's a dynamic back and a solar system talent, I just think that although he's that good, you can get another good running back later in the draft, whether it's in the second or third round. And this is where I think that the Giants can end up trading back. I think that they could trade with the Bills to acquire the 12th and 22nd picks in the draft, or they can trade back with someone like the Patriots if they really want a quarterback that badly. I think the Giants need to acquire more depth in their draft this year so they can build for the next few coming years.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there, Jacob. I mean, yeah, you want to accumulate picks, but the Giants, they're only 2 seasons removed from being in the playoffs and having a pretty solid team. They got a lot of talent from that team left. They have Olivier Vernon, they got Odell, and that's the thing with Odell. He's more dynamic than any weapon Penn State had. I mean, Deshaun Hamilton, he's a pretty good, receiver, but he's not Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham, he's a guy you change the entire game plan for. You want to stop that guy. And then you have 2 guys that had that, game changer kind of factor. You want to get them on your team. And, the Giants have missed on star running backs. They missed on Todd Gurley. They missed on Kareem Hunt. They miss on all these guys. I think this is the year they say, we're getting our running back. We're going to run the ball. The Giants are a power running team, and, I think that they have Barkley. They're going to be able to go back to that power running kind of game plan. And our next topic we have is who's actually the best quarterback in this class. Obviously, there's a narrative who's going first overall, who's going, any other pick. Who do you think is going to have the highest ceiling out of all these quarterbacks? Who's going to have the better career?
Well, I think talking about careers, it's a little far-fetched considering that they haven't even stepped on the field yet. But when you analyze their film and look at their tendencies and everything, I think right now going into the draft, Josh Rosen is the best quarterback on the board. I think he's the most ready to step on the field right now and have the ball in his hands and start for a franchise. But with that, there's the people that say Sam Darnold's the best. Baker Mayfield's a great quarterback who obviously won a Heisman Trophy, but I think Josh Rosen, his accuracy, along with Baker Mayfield's, is just elite coming out of college. There was a game where Josh Rosen was throwing a 10-yard out to his receiver on the left sideline, and he fit it into a space that literally only the wide receiver could catch the ball. The defender didn't even have a chance of getting the ball on it and was called for a first down. I think Rosen, with his accuracy and his intelligence, is easily one of the best quarterbacks in this draft, but at the end of the day, with the lack of running that he can display in a game compared to Darnold, I think Darnold overall will have a better career.
That's the thing with Rosen. I think that he's definitely, the most polished, the most pro-ready quarterback. I think you got to look at his injury concerns. I mean, look at Andrew Luck. He's arguably, one of the best young quarterbacks in the game. They're saying this guy's going to be the next Peyton Manning. He's going to be the next Brett Favre. He's going to be amazing. And he can't stay on the field. If you can't stay on the field, you can't play football. So that's why I think Rosen, although, he's very talented, if he can't stay on the football field, it doesn't do you any good. That's why I'm going to take an outside pick. I'm either going to say Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson. I think both those guys, they have that wow factor. I mean, they're both winners. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, he's the best athlete at quarterback. I mean, you could be looking at another Michael Vick. I mean, Michael Vick was a very talented player. He's very fun to watch. I think that could be Lamar Jackson, but that's only if he goes to the right system. If he gets to, a Patriots team where he could really lead that team after Tom Brady's done, or even like the Cardinals, I feel like that'd be really fun to watch. I think he could be really good.
Yeah, I agree with you with Lamar Jackson with his dynamic ability and athleticism, but he's one of those players where you have to let him learn. And if it's not for 1 year, it's for 2 years. The guy, his accuracy isn't great. His deep ball accuracy, he overthrows a lot of wide receivers. And I think to have that accuracy that he has, or that he needs to develop, he'll need to be in a system who already has a established quarterback at the helm who can teach Lamar Jackson the ins and outs of pro football.
And that's, I think, will eventually happen. I mean, I'd say there's a very minimal chance he could go top 10. I mean, draft day, anything could happen. But I really think he'll go, the teens, 20s. It'll go to a team where he could sit for a year. And I think eventually he'll, come out on top and he could be a very good pro. I mean, you see Russell Wilson, that ability to just, scramble in the pocket. And if he really develops like a good pocket passing kind of presence, I think he could definitely be really good. And I think he really has the highest ceiling, but obviously his floor is very low. You could be looking at like a Terrell Pryor where, he could, he might have to switch to another position just to stay in the NFL. So our last topic we have now is, which QB do the Jets want? So this is a little different than the situation the Browns have, because obviously the Jets are picking third. They're not going to really have as much of a say in who they draft. They're going to get the third best prospect on the board.
Yeah, well, I think when you're looking at mock drafts, I think Josh Allen goes 1 and Darnold goes 2 to the Giants. So that leaves the Jets with really 2 choices for quarterback. It leaves them with Josh Rosen out of UCLA, leaves them with Baker Mayfield out of Oklahoma. And I think Josh Rosen, I think he is easily the most polished coming out of college, but I think Baker Mayfield really fits their system. And they got a new offensive coordinator who is said to be one of the best unknown West Coast offense coaches in the league. And I think with that comes Baker Mayfield's ability to create plays, extend plays, and have as accurate a ball as anybody. So I think with that, the Jets will probably take Baker Mayfield. I think he'll do great with the New York media. And I just think that with his accuracy and his big playability, he's really good for the Jets.
I think I got to agree with you here. I think it's either going to be Rosen or Baker, because I think, either Allen or Darnold's going to be off the board. You don't really know what the Giants are going to do. But I think that both these guys, they're really made for New York. I mean, Baker Mayfield, he's got the personality. He's got the, he's just got the stuff. He's just got that it factor. I think that he's really going to do well in the New York kind of media. And Rosen, I don't know. I just really envision him in a Jets jersey. I feel like, that he could be their guy. He's definitely, the most polished. I think he'll be a really good player for them if that's who they decide to draft.
I think either of them could work out based on their skill already coming out of college. I just think it's more of a attitude and, a clash with the New York media that can hold the Jets back from taking Rosen. Although he is extremely intelligent and knows the ins and outs of the game and everything beyond that, I just think Baker Mayfield will fit them better and hopefully turn their franchise around.
So we're agreeing here, Baker Mayfield's the pick if you're the New York Jets.
Correct.
Yeah, I definitely think that'll be a big, storyline that night with the quarterbacks. I think the quarterbacks are really going to be, the story of this draft. Who goes first overall? Who goes, to the Jets? Who goes to the Giants? I mean, I feel like this quarterback class it's very polarizing because it's either all these guys could be stars and do well, or all these guys could fizzle out. It kind of reminds me of that QB class where I'm pretty sure what was it? It was like Jake Locker and all those
Yeah.
guys. That, like all of them are just really polarizing players, and it's kind of like an all or nothing kind of thing. I definitely think that out of all of them, I think Darnold's going to go on to have the best career though. I think he is the highest baseman, and I think ultimately he'll be the better pro.
And that draft with Jake Locker, I believe that was 2010. That was a draft where no quarterback really had that standout talent for the first round. And I think with teams in dire need of quarterbacks, I think that's when the quarterbacks start to push up on the board to where they got selected in the first round. And that's the issue with next year's draft. There aren't many, if any, quarterbacks that have first round grades and potential. So that's why I think that the Giants really need to secure their quarterback at the second pick overall in this year's draft.
Jacob, I gotta say, I think you're saying that you don't want to see SB in big blue colors. I know. I just think that's what it is.
There's only one shade of blue he fits in.
That's right. Big Blue, Royal Blue. And that's about all the time we have here in the studio. Before we sign off, here's what each of our respective top 10 mock drafts look like. We'll see you next time.